There are wounds you carry that were never truly yours, griefs that seem older than your memory, patterns that repeat in your life like echoes from a story you've never lived, yet somehow feel bound to finish. You don't just suffer, you inherit. Maybe you've always felt like the different one in your family, the quiet one, the questioning one, the one who couldn't fit into the mold, not because of rebellion, but because your soul remembered something they forgot. And so you've lived with a strange ache, a sense of unfinished stories. You notice cycles, broken relationships, emotional silence, self-abandonment, shame, not just in your life, but in your lineage. And somehow you know you were sent to end this. This is not just your pain, it is your assignment. You've cried tears that tasted like generations. You've felt a weight that logic couldn't explain. You've stood in rooms where you were the only one who saw the unspoken shadows, and still stayed in love. You came into this life not to repeat, but to redeem, not to react, but to reconcile, not to escape the patterns, but to close them with tenderness and truth. And that calling is heavy. It isolates. It demands. Because to close soul cycles means walking into the very patterns that destroyed others and choosing differently. It means loving where others hardened, staying where others ran, forgiving where others cursed, breaking what was never meant to continue, not in rage, but in reverence. You feel it in your bones. I was sent to finish what others could not. And even when it costs you everything you thought you were, even when it breaks your heart open, you sense it. This is sacred work. This is the reason your soul returned. Carl Jung spoke often of what he called unconscious inheritance, not just genetic, but psychic inheritance, emotional legacies, unfinished dramas, unhealed wounds passed silently from one generation to the next. Nothing has a stronger influence psychologically on their environment, and especially on their children, he wrote, than the unlived life of the parent. These unlived lives, their dreams, repressions, betrayals, do not vanish. They settle deep within the collective unconscious of families, tribes, cultures. And unless someone becomes aware, these stories repeat, blindly, painfully, inevitably. But when one person, one soul, becomes conscious, the pattern cracks. This is the soul cycle you've come to close. In Jungian psychology, this moment is part of the process of individuation, the sacred work of becoming whole, not just for yourself, but for the ancestral river that flows through you. To individuate is to become who you are, not who your lineage scripted you to be. It is to confront the inner complexes that shaped your parents, to meet the shadow they buried, and to decide, this ends with me. You may feel like you were born different for no reason. But Jung would say, your difference is your medicine. You are the one chosen, not because you are perfect, but because you are willing. Willing to see what others refused, willing to break what others normalized, willing to carry the torch of consciousness into the darkest chapters of your bloodline. In Jung's words, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But that privilege often begins in pain, in rupture, in the moment you stop performing and start remembering. You were not sent here to repeat. You were sent here to reconcile. To close soul cycles, you must first step away from the performance. The persona, your crafted mask, your survival role, the version of you that was palatable, predictable, pleasing, must be laid down. Because what you are healing did not begin with your personality. It began with silence. The silence of mothers who swallowed their pain. The silence of fathers who buried their tenderness. The silence of families who forgot how to speak the truth without fear. To break this, you must become silent, not in suppression, but in sacred stillness. This is the archetypal withdrawal, the moment the soul leaves the stage and enters the wilderness. No more explaining, no more proving, no more playing the good one to keep the peace. You disappear, not out of bitterness, but out of devotion to something deeper. You stop reacting, you begin observing, you stop shouting, you begin listening, you enter the ancient rhythm of the desert, where prophets go to unlearn what the world taught them and where the sacred voice finally emerges. This silence is not passive, it is transformational. You are no longer trying to fix what's broken, you are letting it fall, finally. You are no longer asking why they couldn't love you. You are learning to love the part of you that always knew. This is not rebellion, it is return. To the voice beneath the voice. To the truth before the trauma. To the self before the mask. And yes, it may look like you've withdrawn, but in truth, you have entered the temple, the soul's temple, where no audience is needed, because what you are healing cannot be done in public. It is too holy, too ancient, too real. And when you emerge again, you will no longer carry the wound, you will carry the wisdom. In the scriptures, there is a pattern, a rhythm, a divine choreography of cycles that must be closed for something new to begin. One of the most powerful stories of soul closure is found in Joshua chapter 5. After 40 years of wandering in the desert, the children of Israel finally cross the Jordan River. But before they can take hold of the promised land, something unusual happens. God says to Joshua, "Today I have rolled away the reproach of Egypt from you." Joshua 5:9. This isn't just about geography, it's about identity. They had left Egypt physically, but Egypt still lived within them. The trauma of slavery, the patterns of fear, the emotional inheritance of oppression, all of it had to be cut away. And so, before battle, God brings them into silence, into sacred rest, into a hidden place where they can finally let go, not just of Pharaoh, but of who they had become under Pharaoh's rule. This is what happens when you are called to close soul cycles. You cannot enter your inheritance carrying old identities. God will often pause your progress, not to punish you, but to heal what you inherited, not to delay you, but to re-identify you. Because He is not just the God of deliverance, He is the God of closure. In Isaiah 43:18-19, God says, "Forget the former things, do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing." But to see the new, you must let the old go, not just in action, but in identity. Jesus himself closed the greatest cycle of all, not with violence, but with forgiveness. It is finished. 3 words that shattered hell's inheritance. You too are here to say those words over the cycles that haunt your lineage, not in anger, in authority, not in resistance, in revelation. Not because you hate your past, but because you are the one chosen to transform it, and heaven knows your name, because you are the one willing to close what others could not. There is a moment in the journey where you stop asking, "Why me?" and start whispering, "It had to be me," not from pride, but from clarity. The pain was real, the patterns were brutal, the inheritance was heavy, but something in you refused to pass it on. You didn't just survive, you transformed. This is the sacred integration. When your suffering becomes wisdom, your silence becomes prayer, and your story becomes light for those still lost in the pattern. Jung spoke of individuation as becoming whole, not perfect. And wholeness means carrying your scars as sacred scrolls, not as shame. You begin to see your past not as failure, but as formation. You begin to bless what broke you because it revealed what could no longer continue. You begin to walk in peace, not because the storm stopped, but because you became the quiet within it. You no longer seek validation. You live from embodiment. You no longer fear the silence. You meet God there. Romans 8:28 begins to echo in your bones. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him. Not some things, all things, even the wounds, even the wrongs, even the ruptures. Your soul didn't come to this life for comfort. It came for closure. And in that closure, you rediscover your essence, unmasked, untangled, undivided. You don't just speak differently, you carry a different frequency. You walk into rooms, and the cycles feel it. The end has arrived. And not through force, but through presence, through wholeness, through the quiet power of a soul that has faced its storm and bowed to the light. You are the threshold. You are the hinge of generations. You are where the old ends and the new begins. If you've carried what wasn't yours, if you've cried for reasons you couldn't name, if you've broken away from what felt ancient, heavy, inherited, you are not broken. You are chosen. You didn't come here to repeat. You came here to redeem, to say enough with grace, to close the cycle with compassion, to walk away not in hatred, but in healing. And you don't need to explain that to anyone, because those who carry soul assignments often move in silence, often feel alone. But in heaven's eyes, they are never forgotten. You are not a mistake. You are the threshold between what was and what must no longer be. You are the one the cycle fears because you no longer feed it. You love where it hated. You listen where it silenced. You stay awake where it numbed, and because of that, it ends with you. So breathe deep, stand tall, and speak this truth over your life. I am here to close sacred cycles. Let the bloodline feel it. Let the silence honor it. Let your life become the altar where patterns are broken and blessings begin.